We live in a culture that is so polarized and divisive, it's sometimes hard to have a conversation without it becoming an argument. What if loving the other person is better than winning the argument? Well, that's the question raised by one recording artist and author. In his latest book, he proposes a loving way to disagree called Grace in the Gray.
For 20 years, Mike Donehey was the lead singer of the popular Christian band 10th Avenue North. He loved turning his deepest thoughts into song. When the band ended their long, successful run in 2020, Mike poured his creativity into books, public speaking, and now a podcast. In his latest book, Grace in the Gray, Mike responds to our contentious culture and asks us the question, what if loving the person is better than winning the argument?
Well, Mike Donehey joins us now via Skype. And Mike, we welcome you back to the 700 Club.
Great to be back. Hope you're doing well.
Doing very well, thank you. This book, Grace in the Gray, was not the book you originally set out to write. Tell us what was and then what led you to write this book instead.
Yeah, I thought I was going to write a book about all the most controversial topics, especially in Christendom, and I was going to figure out the right answers. And I started finding out very quickly that a lot of people make a lot of great arguments. And maybe the book that I was trying to write isn't about changing people's positions on certain topics, but actually addressing their posture when they talk about those topics.
Yeah. What do you think is the root of so many relational problems in our culture? I mean, it seems pervasive.
Yeah, that's a multifaceted question, but one way I know that we all need to inspect ourselves is just to look inside and see, is there any bitterness that's lurking about in our hearts? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
You know how when you're talking to someone and the response doesn't match the tone of the conversation? A lot of times that's from bitterness that hasn't been dealt with. I know, at least for me personally.
You know, your dad suffered abuse in his childhood. He could have been very, very bitter. He didn't repeat that pattern in your own family. You talked to him and asked him how he broke this cycle. What did you learn from his example?
Yeah, this was a wild conversation, and I put it in the chapter about bitterness in the book. I said, Dad, a lot of times abuse can be a cycle and it gets handed down generation after generation. Do you know how you stopped that? He goes, oh, yeah, I know exactly. I go, oh, I didn't expect such a straight answer. He goes, I was sitting in a church in Nebraska and the preacher said, Jesus said, hey, if you want to be forgiven, you have to extend my forgiveness in the same way you receive it. And I realized I was really mad at my dad. So I wrote him a letter and I knowingly, oh, you wrote him a letter saying, Dad, I forgive you for everything you did to me. He goes, no. I go, what? He goes, I asked my dad to forgive me for the bitterness I held in my heart toward him. I said, well, what did he say when he got the letter? And my dad said, I don't know. All I know is once I put that letter in the mailbox, I was free.
Wow. Wow. So we have the ability to initiate that. In your book, you lay out some practical steps that we can take to kind of tone down our rhetoric and communicate with kindness instead of hostility. Will you go over some of those steps with us?
Oh, yeah. Well, we need to subjectify the people we've objectified. We need to humanize the people we've deified, the people who just accept everything they say as gospel truth instead of inspecting what they say. And we need to address our posture as important as our position. And I'll give you an example. Our band got picketed one time. Okay. So, we thought our music was very God glorifying and a group of protesters did not think so. So they were outside picketing us, telling everyone that if they listened to our music, they were going to meet the devil face to face. And I went out there and I talked to them. I go, hey guys, what's the problem? And they're like, well, you're playing the devil's music. That's what's the problem. And so, I'm trying to talk to them. I said, how do you feel like this is going, this approach? And they said, it doesn't matter. We're telling them the truth. And this is where a lot of us kind of go wrong. We think, as long as I'm telling you the truth, it doesn't matter how offensively I tell you that truth. And this is where Paul is really helpful and kind of annoying, because Paul sums up my entire book in 2 verses to Timothy. He goes, all right, Timothy, first of all, he's talking about don't get caught up in foolish controversies. Hello? Guilty. I've done that. And he goes, here's how you do it, Timothy. You ready? Timothy, I'm sure, was like sitting there like, yeah, I'm ready. He goes, okay, you're going to not be quarrelsome. Ouch. Everyone goes, I'm not quarrelsome. Well, nobody thinks they're quarrelsome. You have to ask your friends and family if you're quarrelsome. You'll get a better idea. It says, don't be quarrelsome. It says, be kind to everyone. Everyone? Everyone. You must be able to teach, which means don't get caught talking about things you don't actually know about. Okay. And then he says, patiently enduring evil. It's like, okay, I don't like evil. I don't like enduring it. And I certainly don't want to do it patiently. Can I get an amen? And then this is the kicker. He says, correct your opponents. We go, yes, I love this part. It says, correct your opponents. But then he gives this caveat. He says, but with all gentleness. And I looked up the Greek there, Terry, and apparently it's with all gentleness. He says, perhaps God will grant them repentance leading to the truth. And I think this is so crucial for a lot of us to understand. Do we actually think God's the one who changes people, or do we think it's our responsibility?
Yeah.
According to Paul, our responsibility is to tell the truth, but to do it kindly, patiently, and with all gentleness, because God is the one who actually grants repentance.
So the goal is kind of to be winsome rather than winning in every situation.
Yeah, what if you are worried more about loving the person than winning the argument?
Yeah. Wow, there's the question to ask, isn't it? We live in a culture that is so divided. I just found this book to be filled with all kinds of wise wisdom. A More Loving Way to Disagree is the subtitle, but the title, if you're looking for it, is Grace in the Gray. It's Mike's new book, and it's available nationwide. Mike, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you so much. And I'll just say my mom read it, and she said it was convicting and challenging. She loved it. So there you go.
Okay. So nice to have you with us again. Bless you.